Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. And today, we're going back in time. We're going to explore a world of empires,
Hmm.
but not just through the usual stuff like the battles and the conquests and all that.
Yeah.
We're going to look at how regional empires, these ones between 1336 and 1646 CE,
Okay.
they used literature and oral traditions. It's fascinating how they kind of almost like solidified their place in history through stories.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, we've got chronicles, memoirs, whispers of folklore.
Yeah.
Oh, and even grand architecture to decode.
It really is remarkable. These empires, they understood the power of stories. I mean, think about it. They weren't just, passively recording history.
All right.
They were actively crafting it, shaping perceptions, and ensuring their legacies would live on.
Exactly. I mean, it's like a blueprint for, I don't know, building a brand almost.
That's a great analogy.
But in this case, the brand is an empire.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the written word. These empires, they weren't shy about commissioning these like grand historical accounts.
No, they weren't.
I mean, take the Akbarnama, for example.
Right, the chronicle of the Mughal Emperor Akbar's reign.
Exactly.
A detailed account of his time in power.
Yeah, and it's not just, dates and battles and dry facts.
No, not at all.
It really dives into his personality, his policies, kind of tries to get under the skin of the ruler.
It does. It aims to capture the essence of the man.
For example, there's this passage describing how Akbar implemented a land revenue system based on actual crop yields, like what farmers were actually producing,
Oh, I see. Yes.
which, this shows his focus on fairness and efficiency.
Yes. It really highlights the qualities he wanted to be known for.
Exactly, the image he wanted to project. I mean, that's a great example of how these texts offer a glimpse into the minds of these rulers.
Absolutely. And they weren't just dry records, as you said.
Right.
They often employed, really vivid language and storytelling techniques to kind of draw the reader in and promote a specific image of the ruler.
Almost like, I don't know, a carefully curated PR campaign centuries before we had social media. They were ahead of their time.
It's fascinating. And another great example is Jahangir's memoirs.
Oh, right.
The Tezuki Yoshihangiri. Have you had a chance to look at that?
I have, yeah. And it's incredible the detail he goes into about his love for gardens.
Yes. And architecture.
You can tell he was a man of refined tastes.
Absolutely. His descriptions of the Shalimar Bagh in Kashmir,
Oh, beautiful.
with its cascading fountains and the intricate floral patterns, I mean, it just reveals his, aesthetic sensibilities.
And highlights the Mughal Empire's cultural sophistication, too.
Right, exactly.
It's amazing how even a garden can become a tool for, projecting power and prestige.
It's true.
But, and I think this is important to remember, we
Yeah.
have to remember that these chronicles were written from a particular perspective.
Absolutely. We have to read them critically,
Right.
understanding that they often served political agendas.
Of course.
And, sometimes glossing over the less flattering aspects of a ruler's reign.
So it's kind of like trying to understand a historical figure based solely on their carefully curated Instagram feed.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
We get a glimpse into their world, but it might not be the whole picture.
That's right. And that's why it's so crucial to look beyond just the official accounts
Right.
and explore those narratives, the stories that might not have made it into those grand chronicles.
Exactly.
And that's where oral traditions and folklore come in.
It's history from the ground up, almost.
It is.
Those stories shared around campfires, passed down through generations.
And they offer such valuable alternative perspectives. For instance, folk tales about Sher Shah Suri,
Okay.
who, as you know, briefly interrupted Mughal rule.
Right.
Well, these tales, they might reveal how his administrative reforms actually impacted ordinary people,
Interesting.
which is a perspective often missing from those courtly chronicles.
It's like getting the other side of the story, the side that's not always written down.
Precisely. And those stories can be just as revealing, if not more so, than the official accounts.
It adds a whole new layer of depth, doesn't it?
It does. And it reminds us that history is never just one simple story.
Right.
It's this complex tapestry of narratives. And often, the most interesting insights come from exploring those less heard voices.
I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've started to uncover the power of the written word and hinted at the fascinating world of oral traditions.
Indeed. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve deeper into those alternative narratives, exploring how they challenged, complemented, and sometimes even contradicted the official histories.
So join us next time as we continue our journey through the fascinating interplay of literature and oral traditions in shaping the legacies of these remarkable empires. It's like we've got these official accounts, the chronicles and all that,
Right.
and then we have the folk tales running alongside them.
Almost like a shadow history.
Exactly, yeah.
And sometimes those folk tales can be surprisingly subversive.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They might poke fun at powerful rulers or highlight injustices that the official histories might try to downplay.
So they're not always just, lighthearted stories.
No, not always. It reminds us that history is always a contest of narratives.
Absolutely. Whose story gets told and how?
Exactly.
And it's not just the stories themselves, right?
Mhm.
I mean, how they were shared matters too.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. A story inscribed on, say, a majestic mosque, that's going to have a different impact than one whispered, among villagers.
Right, totally different context.
The medium shapes the message. It influences how it's received and remembered.
It's like how we consume news today. A headline on a website hits differently than a long-form podcast or a documentary.
Precisely. And these empires, they were masters of utilizing different media to spread their message.
Yeah, we talked about the written chronicles.
Right.
But what about architecture?
Yeah.
The Mughals, for example, known for their magnificent buildings.
Right.
I mean, the Taj Mahal.
Oh, the Taj Mahal, of course.
It's not just a beautiful building, it's a statement, right?
Absolutely. It's a symbol.
Shah Jahan built it as a mausoleum for his beloved wife, but it also served as a symbol of Mughal grandeur, architectural prowess.
It's a masterpiece.
Exactly. It served a dual purpose.
It did. A tangible representation of their power and artistry.
And even the gardens surrounding the Taj Mahal, they contribute to the story.
Oh, yes.
They're designed according to the Charbot style.
Right, a Persian tradition representing paradise.
It's like they were creating this whole experience.
They were. And it reinforces the idea of the Mughal Empire as a paradise on earth, ruled by a just and powerful emperor.
I mean, every detail, from the inscription on a tomb to the layout of a garden, it all contributes to the larger narrative.
Every element carefully chosen to convey a specific message.
Fascinating. These empires really were masters of storytelling.
They were.
But these narratives weren't limited to just the Mughal Empire, right? I mean, each regional empire had its own unique way of preserving and transmitting its history.
Absolutely.
Take the Vijayanagara Empire in South India, for example.
Oh, yes. A fascinating case. They had those incredible temples.
Right. They were known for their impressive architecture.
Yes, and those temples are a prime example of how architecture served as a storytelling medium. You see, unlike the Mughals, whose architectural influences came from Persia, the Vijayanagara Empire, they drew inspiration from earlier South Indian dynasties.
Okay, so they were looking to their own past for inspiration.
Precisely. Their temples, they were covered in these intricate carvings depicting scenes from Hindu epics.
Wow.
And showcasing their devotion to the gods.
So it's like they were connecting their rule to a larger, more ancient history.
Exactly. It was a way of legitimizing their power through those connections. A visual representation of cultural memory, linking the Vijayanagara Empire to this rich tradition that predated them.
So they used visual storytelling to connect with their subjects and reinforce their authority.
Precisely. They were masters of it.
It's amazing how these empires, each in their own way, recognize the power of narrative. Not just to, record history, but to shape it, to use it to their advantage.
They understood that stories have a profound impact on how people perceive the world.
But what about the Sultanate of Bengal? What kind of narratives were they shaping, especially in a region known for its diverse culture and religious mix?
That's a great question. And it leads us to another fascinating layer of this exploration. You see, the Sultanate of Bengal presents a unique case because, unlike the Mughals or the Vijayanagara Empire, it arose in a region where Islam was already a significant presence.
So the Sultanate of Bengal, they had this challenge. They were coming into a region where Islam was already there. So how did they use literature and these oral traditions to kind of, create their own narrative?
Well, they did something pretty interesting. Instead of trying to impose a purely Islamic identity, they kind of embraced the existing cultural diversity of Bengal.
Interesting.
See, Bengal had a rich tradition of, storytelling, music, poetry, all this stuff, even before Islam arrived.
Right.
And the sultans, they recognized the power of these traditions,
Yeah.
and they incorporated them into their own narrative.
So they didn't erase what was already there. They built upon it.
Exactly. It was a really clever strategy, and you can see this reflected in their patronage of Bengali literature.
Oh, okay.
They supported, poets and writers who blended Islamic themes with those local folk tales, those legends that were already popular.
So it's like this hybrid culture emerged.
Yes, a unique blend. And it resonated with the diverse population of Bengal.
It's like they were saying, hey, we're part of this rich tapestry, not here to, replace it.
Exactly. And this approach, it helped them to solidify their rule. It fostered this sense of shared identity.
It's amazing how these empires, each in their own way, they recognize the power of narrative, not just to, record history, but to shape it, to use it to their advantage.
Absolutely. They understood that stories have this incredible power to unite people, even across, religious and cultural differences.
And it makes you think about how we engage with history today. I mean, we are constantly bombarded with narratives.
Yeah.
News articles, social media posts, everything.
It's everywhere.
And so it's more important than ever to be, critical thinkers.
Yes. To question those stories we're being told, to seek out different perspectives.
Because history is never just one story, right? It's this complex web of narratives, each with its own biases, interpretations.
Exactly. And by exploring those diverse narratives, we can gain a much richer, more nuanced understanding of the past.
Yeah.
And that understanding, it can help us navigate the complexities of our own present.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of empires and their stories, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to hold on to?
I think the most important thing to remember is that history is not just something that happened, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Right.
It's a living thing. It's breathing. It continues to shape our world today. The stories we tell, the narratives we choose to believe, they have the power to influence our perceptions, our decisions, even our future.
Wow, that's a powerful thought. And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in shaping the narratives of our time.
Absolutely. So, be curious, be critical, and keep exploring this fascinating world of history. You never know what insights you might uncover.
Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible journey through the power of storytelling and shaping empires.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, remember, the past is never truly past. Its stories live on, waiting to be discovered and shared.